While the vibes remain high surrounding the Philadelphia 76ers, they're coming off their second loss of the season at the hands of the Indiana Pacers and find themselves in the mix for trade rumors for Bulls star Zach LaVine. In this video, I want to break down the latest reports regarding Zach LaVine and the future of his potential trade, as well as dive into his fit on the Sixers. Now, before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 82.9% of you guys watching the videos have not subscribed to the channel just yet. The Sixers season is in full swing. There's plenty to be excited about, and I'll be breaking things down start to finish this season. So I want the Sixers Digest family to keep growing, each and every one of you along for the ride. Now, to get into the topic of today, it is Zach LaVine. So it's no surprise that his name has come up in trade conversations, that this is a conversation. The Bulls were a team that were very much on the watch list as far as a potential team to trade with as the Sixers searched out for the season. We know the James Harden trade was essentially a kick the can down the line move. You could stock the closets for assets and sit back and wait to see if they can find the missing piece. Now, is Zach LaVine the missing piece is a greater discussion. But to dive in specifically to the reports here, I want to begin with the report from Shams, and he initially reported that there is mutual interest between Zach LaVine and the Bulls for finding a new destination, and then released the Miami Heat, Los Angeles Lakers, and Philadelphia 76ers that are teams that expected to consider a trade for LaVine. So it's no surprise to see each of these teams on this list, and they each have fair reason why. But we're obviously looking at the Sixers side of things. Zach LaVine is a guy that has connections to both Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. We'll start right there. That Zach LaVine is a Drew Hanlon guy who Joel Embiid has trained with throughout his career. He has trained with Zach LaVine specifically on multiple occasions. Zach LaVine is also a New Balance guy and Clutch Sports guy, both of which fit Tyrese Maxey. I know they filmed a commercial together this summer, that they have ties there, and it does make sense from the connections standpoint that there is. And what really kicked it into gear for me of, oh yeah, Zach LaVine's getting traded, was this picture right here of Rich Paul and Zach LaVine. You can see them each wearing the B Clutch sweatshirts there. Rich Paul is one of the most powerful men in all of sports. The Sixers are very familiar with him navigating trade situations from the Ben Simmons situation here in Philly. He obviously is Tyrese Maxey's agent as well, so there's plenty of ties there. One of the more powerful men in all of sports, and it's clear that Zach LaVine is his next target with navigating this situation. Now, I don't want to say too much changed from this initial Shams report after reading the article as a whole. A lot of it was speculated on the standpoint of there is tension within the Bulls locker room. They're frustrated, they're underperforming, and there isn't a great outlook for where to go from here. But the real speculation comes in the fact that just about everybody in the basketball world is in Chicago this weekend for the Champions Classic in college basketball. That is where this picture was taken from of Zach LaVine and Rich Paul. They pulled up to the Kansas game last night. But Shams was essentially theorizing that there's going to be some conversations had this weekend between teams. That is likely true. That is fair to, I guess, assume. But from my understanding and my perception of reading the article, this doesn't change matters in as drastic as many people are taking us to be. And to put a little more, I guess, water on these rumors, we have this report from John Clark of NBC here that says Bulls two-time All-Star Zach LaVine could be available in a trade, according to Shams Charania. It is my understanding the Sixers will look into this, but I'm told they are happy with the way the team is playing right now and will probably lean towards waiting until the trade deadline for a big trade to see if there is any needs or injury issues. I'm told the Sixers like the depth they have now, and the Bulls' high-salaried players may not be a fit. So interesting stuff from John Clark here. He is a guy that is pretty plugged in on the Sixers side of things, and I've heard a lot of similar rumblings from other Sixers reporters. I know Keith Pompey and Kyle Neubeck kind of echoed a similar sentiment with that, but I see the logic from both sides here. For me, the greatest appeal of the James Harden trade was that you had time to think about it, that you have time to evaluate what this roster is truly missing. And what we've seen in the meantime is Tyrese Maxey is a budding superstar, that we're seeing the way he's grown. He's coming off a 50-point game just over the weekend. That one of the most impressive performances that I've witnessed from an individual talent. The Sixers should be doing absolutely nothing that risks stunting the growth of Tyrese Maxey. And that's where we get into kind of the crossfire with Zach LaVine. To dive into his stats specifically here and what he brings to the table, through his career, he's a 20.5 point per game scorer, averaged 3.9 assists, 4.0 rebounds. He's a 38.2% three-point shooter, which is pretty good, on 5.8 attempts. His volume has gone up even further in recent years, shooting 7.4 three-point attempts per game this year. Just a 30.9% three-point percentage thus far. But if you circle back and look at that 2020 to 2021 season, he shot over 40%, 41.9% on 8.2 attempts per game, which is really impressive stuff, both from a volume standpoint and just an efficiency standpoint there. It's really tough to hit those kind of numbers. That's the kind of ballpark that Tyrese Maxey is currently working in. Now, when talking about Tyrese Maxey specifically, we're seeing him look much more comfortable in an on-ball role, that he's able to run an offense in a way that I think many questioned leading into this year. He's still looking comfortable creating his own shot. And to speak to last night's game specifically, Maxey statistically still looks solid. His numbers look good. But I was frustrated from that game. And it's not something to say that I'm changing my mind on who I think Tyrese Maxey is. It's just that we're going to go through these growing pains. That I thought he was thrown off by the physicality of a game. He only had one three-point attempt with 5 minutes remaining in the third quarter, which just can never happen for what the Sixers need from him. He has to stay aggressive and seek out his shot in a way. So I saw one of those moments last night from Tyrese Maxey. Does that change my perception for this? The biggest part that appeals to me with Zach LaVine is these stats here. When we talk about the spot-up numbers for surrounding Joel Embiid, in 2020 to 2023, so far this season, he scored all of last season, he scored 363 points on 1.23 points per possession, which is in the 88th percentile in spot-ups. He was also in the 90th percentile the year before and 94th percentile in the year before that. Those are really intriguing numbers to me because that is what you were looking for. The final piece that the Sixers must be cashing their chips in on this big trade should be the link between Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. That spot-up shooting is a big deal. Now, I will say Zach LaVine has his strong supporters and strong people that don't like him. The people that don't like him point to the defense is a negative. Now, I'll stop it right there and say he's still a better defender than James Harden straight up. So that is going to be better than last year when we look at those kind of numbers. But he's definitely not a guy that I want to hang my hat on defensively. And I do have some legitimate concerns there because as I look at how this team projects and sort of look at their path through the playoffs, my greatest concern is how these Sixers are going to guard the guys like Jason Tatum, like Jaylen Brown, like Giannis, all these high-level wing players that the Sixers have struggled throughout time. I don't love their options this year. That currently we're looking at some sort of mixture of Nicholas Batum, Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton thrown in the mix there. That concern of mine is why I tend to lean toward an option like an OG Anunoby as far as a trade target rather than a guy like Zach LaVine. But also when watching a game like last night against the Pacers, which was super high paced, that they needed the offense to keep up, it's clear they need another creator. Now, to stop it right there, it's also very clear that they're missing guys like Kelly Oubre and Nicholas Batum, who was not there last night. So it wasn't the team in its complete sense. And frankly, Kelly Oubre, that loss is going to be much more notable than I think I even initially thought. And I think most people realized that for sure he was a 16-point per game scorer through his first couple games. We know he's a 20-point per game scorer all of last year. The Sixers scored 6 total bench points last night. That is where the Kelly Oubre factor is missing. And I know he started for the last couple games before getting injured, but just having that secondary punch, that guy that can come in and score, that is greatly going to be missed. Now, another factor specifically to Zach LaVine here is the contract side of things. I always think this is important when having these trade discussions, and to pull up his specific contract here, on the books for $40 million this year, $43 million next year, $46 million in 25-26, and then $48.9 million on a player option in 26-27. That is a lot of money for a guy that is going to be a third option, and especially with the light at the end of the tunnel with this Tobias Harris contract, it is concerning to put yourself on the books, and that's especially the case when the Sixers have talked so much about this cap space plan, how much they want to attack this offseason, put themselves in a unique position where they have the reigning MVP of the league, a budding star in Tyrese Maxey, and the second most cap space across the entire NBA. As things currently project, and this obviously could change with a trade, for example, if they were to attack LaVine here, but as things currently are constructed, the Sixers are on pace to have the second most cap space across the entire NBA this offseason, only behind the Orlando Magic, and the Sixers definitely have a more appealing location and destination for free agents than the Magic, although they're obviously in Florida, and they have Paolo and Franz, and they have a good young core down there. But for a win-now free agent target, Philadelphia very well could be the top destination available, and I don't think Daryl Morey is willing to sacrifice that. That is the biggest thing that takes Zach LaVine off the list of options for me. So I think that is something to consider heavily. That through time and time again, Daryl Morey has harped on this cap space plan. That's the primary reason that he only got expirings back in this James Harden deal. And by that, I mean Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, and KJ Martin. All 4 of those players that came back in the return for James Harden are set to be free agents this year as well. Now, the thing that I also think is worth noting is when I talk about a guy like OG Anunoby, who has a player option for next year but is also due to be a free agent, I do see the value in attacking a player like that in trade because you can get their bird rights through the trade and then go over the salary cap numbers while freeing up an additional max slot. So what this would theoretically look like was And I'm just using OG as an example here. This is not the only player that this applies to. But if you want to trade for OG, you get those bird rights. You then have all this cap space. He's technically a free agent, but he's now your own free agent. So you have a little more freedom and flexibility in what you can do. That is the same reason why they pushed off this Tyrese Maxey contract until this offseason. Has nothing to do with their long-term faith with Tyrese Maxey, and he honestly has only upped his contract more, and if he makes an all-star game and makes an all-NBA team, which are very much on the table, it's going to come with a better payday for him this offseason. But the reason that it was pushed off is so that they could attack in free agency, bring in this star that they are looking for or this missing piece, and then sign Maxey, because you can go over that number in an easier fashion when you are re-signing your player versus signing someone else's. So that is something to keep in mind for this. But the bottom line is it has to come down to the basketball fit. I don't believe that Zach LaVine is the guy at this point in time. Now, could that change if we see Tyrese Maxey begin to regress back, look like he's not quite ready to be that superstar leap? I do think LaVine gets a worse rep than some. I don't think he's a losing player in the way that he sometimes is labeled. I get it. He's played 4 career postseason games. We don't really know. But I do think that he's not a guy that's going to dribble the air out of the basketball. It isn't a James Harden situation. I don't think he would be eating into Maxey's touches that much. I like the way LaVine moves off balls, and if he's willing to buy in, it does make some sense. That if the connection's here, if Joel and Maxey want him here, I can be talked into it. But I think it comes with a great deal of sacrifice. And with the Sixers just getting their assets they have, it feels a little early to make that all-in push. For now, they're in a good spot that they can sit back, they can evaluate a little farther. I don't think this Bulls trade is going to happen overnight in the way that many are making out to be. So let the Sixers continue to steer the ship, evaluate what they have, and ultimately we will see what this roster will come. But I do want to hear your guys' thoughts, so let me know in the comments if you would be in favor of a Zach LaVine trade, if you would not. As I mentioned, I think my biggest issue is this would have to be the deal, and I think it's a little premature and not quite the exact guy that they should be cashing in for the deal. But as I mentioned, I do want to hear your guys' comments, so let me know. Drop a comment, give me know your thoughts. Make sure to drop a like on this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The Sixers are back in action tonight against the Boston Celtics, so I'm sure I'll be back with some thoughts on that. But appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Sixers Digest.